This is a presentation on BUMED Instruction 5040.2 Charlie, the Bureau of Medicine and Surgery Medical Inspector General Inspection Program. Be careful out there when you're doing your advancement studying. There is an updated version of this instruction. It is now on the Delta version of this, but the bibliography still has 5040.2 Charlie, the previous edition. And as you know, you should study what's on your bibliography. That's what your test questions will be pulled from. And looking at the instruction, it's pretty similar, but there's not as much. It's actually condensed. It's a few pages short than what the previous version was. So 5040.2 Charlie, that's the one that's on your bibliography. The purpose of this instruction is to publish objectives, policies, and procedures of the BUMED Med Inspector General Inspection Program. The objectives of the BUMED Med Inspector General Inspection Program are to assess command efficiency and effectiveness of BSO 18 activities and to improve an organization's mission readiness and performance based on program-specific policies and directions. So BSO 18, Budget Submitting Office 18, that's BUMED and anything that falls underneath BUMED. It's considered a Budget Submitting Office 18 or BSO 18 activity. So what BUMED is trying to do is they're trying to make sure they set up this Med Inspector General Inspection Program to look at all its subordinate commands and make sure they're maintaining readiness, that their performance is consistent with what we want in the Navy medicine, and then to look at the specific programs, specific policies, and make sure that we're following out those policies, that we're doing things appropriately. A lot of the instructions that fall under your bibliography, they set policy. A lot of these instructions, when the MEDIG comes down, they're pulling these instructions and they're making sure that you have these things, these policies in place, these programs in place, and you're compliant with the instructions. So when the Med Inspector General comes down to your MTF or your clinic or any kind of BSO, if you fall under Navy Medicine, any kind of BSO 18 activity, they can have some findings and recommendations. They can find, and they're going to, like I said, they're going to look at all sorts of different programs. They're going to look at if you got IDCs at the command, for instance. They're going to make sure you're running the appropriate independent duty corpsman program, or that your PHAs are being done appropriately, or your limited duty programs done. Everything you can kind of think of, all the policies and the programs that a command has, MEDIG is going to come and look at. So they can find that your programs are compliant, or they can make some recommendations. They can give you what's called an RFI, a requirement for improvement. They can have a supplemental finding, or there can be an opportunity for improvement. So these are the things they can find when they look at it. They can say you're compliant, that there's a requirement for improvement, there's a supplemental finding, or there's an opportunity for improvement. So now we got to talk about what each one of these mean. Compliance kind of easy, right? If you're compliant, your program doesn't have any deficiencies. It's good to go. You're doing a good job. Keep doing what you're doing. However, if you get an RFI, a requirement for improvement, well, that's saying that your program doesn't exist. You don't have something you're supposed to have, or it's so deficient in its major elements that it does not fulfill the intent of policy. So RFI, that's the most severe, that's the worst finding they can have when it comes to any kind of programs a command is supposed to have. Supplemental finding, your program has an effective and formal process in place. It's there, but it's not getting there completely, okay? So it requires some modifications to achieve full compliance. And then an opportunity for improvement. Your program's good, but they're just giving you some recommendations that's going to make it more effective, kind of give you some best practices they've seen throughout maybe the fleet or something like that. Hey, I got a good idea. Here's an opportunity for improvement, but your program's good. All right, so your findings, you can be compliant, which means no deficiencies at all, or they can have a requirement for improvement, means that your program is non-existent. That's the most severe finding they can have. A supplemental, like, hey, you've got an effective and formal process in place, you've got the program, but it's not getting there completely, so it needs some modifications, or an opportunity for improvement, and that's just to make it more effective. Everything's good, we just want to make it more effective. So if you get an RFI, if a program is identified as having a requirement for improvement, there's a couple things that need to happen, right? So again, that's non-existent program or one that is deficient in major elements, so it does not fulfill the intent of policy. So an RFI requires a command to respond with an implementation status report, an ISR. So if a program receives an RFI, the command has to respond with an ISR, an implementation status report. And that ISR is going to be submitted using using a special form called the OpNav 5040/2. So it follows the SSIC code of the instruction, right? This is BUMED instruction 5040.2 Charlie. Well, your OpNav, your ISR is submitted on the OpNav 5040/2. It is due within 60 days of receiving that RFI. The command gets the RFI from the MEDIG, they got to submit an implementation status report saying, hey, this is what we're doing to fix it. All right, so within 60 days. And then if it's still, and if that 60 days doesn't close it out, you're going to submit an ISR, follow-on ISRs every 90 days until it's deemed closed by the MEDIG. All right, so the initial implementation status report after getting a requirements for improvement, 60 days, and then every 90 days until it's closed, until that program is now meeting policy every 90 days. Now, if we get to a year, and if RFA remains open greater than a year, then a letter needs to be sent to the regional commander addressing why the RFI remains open. So say you're at Navy Medical Center San Diego and you got a program there that's not compliant at all or non-existent. The MEDIG is going to identify that when they're doing their inspection. They're going to give you a requirement for improvement. And the command's got to submit an ISR on the OpNav 5040/2 within 60 days. And let's say they don't close it out in that 60 days, so they're going to have to do the follow-on, the subsequent ones. They're going to submit them every 90 days. And then if it stays open for greater than a year, well, now that's now that command, like Balboa or the Navy Medical Center San Diego, they've got to send a letter to Navy Medicine Region West saying, hey, this is why this remains open. So when the Med Inspector General Inspection Program is coming down to inspect like an MTF or clinic or somebody who provides us patient care, they're going to do it with the Joint Commission. So Med Inspector General Inspection / Joint Commission Accreditation Survey, they're done concurrently. They're going to have a concurrent assessment. So they're going to coordinate with each other. So the Med Inspector General determines the site selection, coordinates with the Joint Commission, and participates in survey interviews and the faculty walk around. The Joint Commission account representative is going to make sure to notify the Med Inspector General Liaison of any required special announced or unannounced focus, follow-up, or random unannounced surveys by the Joint Commission of any Navy MTF, any Navy medical treatment facility. Navy Medicine Commands will be notified of impending inspections by the MEDIG or the Joint Commission, all right, account representative that is, and they get 7 business days in advance, okay? So a Navy Medicine Command gets 7 business days in advance if it's located within the continental United States. If it's OCONUS, they're going to get 30 business days, okay? Outside the continental United States, 30 business day heads up, of an impending inspection in advance. And then the MEDIG will electronically forward the final inspection report to the command, plus with a copy to the regional commander about 4 weeks at the end of inspection. So if you're CONUS, if you're within the United States, you get 7 days heads up. OCONUS, 30 days, 30 business days that is. And then when the inspection is done, the MEDIG is going to electronically send the final inspection report with all their findings, whether they gave you RFI supplemental or opportunity for improvement, or if everything was compliant. They got to send that back within approximately 4 weeks at the end of inspection. So let's talk about some responsibilities. So it lists some responsibilities and it talks about echelon 2, 3, 4, and 5. And so I'm just going to kind of cover real quick what these are, what these echelons are. I don't have it on there, but in echelon 1, that's the CNO, all right, the Chief of Naval Operations. Echelon 2, BUMED, right, Navy Medicine, the Bureau of Navy Medicine and Surgery, that's our echelon 2 command, all right. So our echelon 3s, those are going to be our regions, like Navy Medicine East or Navy Medicine West. Those are our echelon 3, our regional commands. Those are echelon 3. Then echelon 4 and 5, and echelon 4 would be like your MTFs, like Navy Medical Center San Diego, Naval Hospital Camp Pendleton, Naval Hospital Jacksonville, just all the MTFs. Those are our echelon 4, and echelon 5s will be like a lot of our detachments, like our Navy Environmental Preventative Medicine units. Those all fall under BUMED. And those guys are echelon 5, like NPMU 5 out of San Diego. That's an echelon 5. So that's what they're talking about with these different echelon responsibilities. Like I said, echelon 1, the CNO. Echelon 2, like BUMED, the Bureau of Medicine and Surgery. 3, that's our regions, Navy Medicine East, West. And then echelon 4, that's usually your MTFs. And then 5, some of those smaller support detachments. All right, so Echelon 2 responsibilities, BUMED responsibilities. They got a liaison with the Joint Commission for Information Sharing and Inspection Survey Coordination, like we were saying on those previous slides, right? They're going to coordinate with each other, and whenever they're doing an inspection of like an MTF or a clinic, they're gonna, they got to coordinate with the Joint Commission. All right, they're going to deliver periodic updates of trends, evolving issues, and ongoing systemic challenges to BUMED leadership. They're going to conduct Med Inspector General site assessments on a 1 to 4 year cycle. So every 1 or 4 years, they're going to come and actually do site assessments. They're going to set a point of contact within the team to serve as a liaison for all issues relating to the Med Inspector General program. Right, and they're going to provide post-inspection briefs to Navy Echelon 3 commanders. So if they inspect like we'll just say Navy Medical Center San Diego, so they inspect that Echelon 4 command, they're going to make sure to brief the region on it as well, right? So that would fall under Navy Medicine West. They're going to go ahead and brief the Echelon 3 commander on that inspection. So the team, the Med Inspector General team, you're going to have the senior inspector or the team leader. You're going to have a comptroller dealing with all the, the money and the financial issues. You got to have a healthcare administrator. You're going to have a physician, nurse, and dentist as needed. A senior enlisted inspector, a safety manager, and you're also going to have a yeoman. All right, and if we're talking, your yeoman's going to be your trip coordinator as well. They're going to deal with all the administrative stuff, but they're also going to deal with coordinating the trip. All right, Echelon 3. And remember, Echelon 3, that's like your regions, Navy Medicine East, Navy Medicine West. So they're going to conduct periodic reviews of Echelon 4 activities. They're going to periodically review all their subordinate commands, all their MTFs. Remember, Echelon 4 are MTFs. They're going to provide oversight as requested from Echelon 2, which is BUMED, regarding completion of submission of ISR. So if one of their Echelon 4s, one of their MTFs gets a RFI, requirement for improvement, they're going to have oversight on that ISR, that implementation status report. Remember that implementation status report, it's got to get submitted within 60 days of receiving the RFI, every 90 days thereafter. If it stays open for a year, that MTF, which is an Echelon 4, has to write a letter to the regional commander, which is an Echelon 3. So they're going to provide oversight regarding all that ISR business. And then it's going to provide Echelon 2 with data from periodic reviews or identified systemic issues within the region. Our Echelon 3/4 responsibilities. So this is where 3 and 4 kind of get together a little bit when it comes to responsibilities. Well, their respective commanding officers got to have a primary and an alternate point of contact for the MEDIG inspection program. They're going to provide the Med Inspector General a prepared brief to review during document review session. So there's a part of the inspection program where they're reviewing the documents, and they got to have a brief prepared for that. And they got to put together focus groups. Okay, they've got to allow for the different focus groups that there's 10 to 12 staff members per focus group, and they got to provide some documents. So we're going to list some of the documents they got to provide for the brief. They got to have the command brief, like we mentioned before. They got to have the Executive Steering Council and a Board of Director minutes for the last 12 months. They got to have process improvement meeting minutes for the past 12 months. Inspection reports over the past 3 years, so previous MEDIG inspections for the last 3 years, they got to provide copies of that. Provider coding, auditing training during the past 12 months, investigations conducted in the past 12 months, command evaluation program reviews for the past 12 months. They've got to provide documentation on the anti-fraud program risk assessment for the past 12 months, the most recent DEOX survey, the Defense Equal Opportunity Management Institute, that's the D in the DEOX, Equal Opportunity Climate Survey. And then they got to provide the NAVMED 5040/7, which is a Med Inspector General position paper. So these are all the documents they have to provide when the MEDIG gets there to do the inspection, and they have that command brief. Programs that are going to be inspected. So broadly, programs fall under these categories, and if you look in the instruction, it's under enclosure 1. I think it's worth reading over a couple times. I wouldn't try to memorize this whole list, but try to get them familiar in your head, because this is an easy place to pull like a multiple choice question out. So programs are going to inspect, they're going to look at your deployment readiness, okay, and things that fall under your deployment readiness, that's your health service augmentee program, which is now the just the augmentee program, your BUMED 6400, or instruction that you guys have on your on your bibliography. They're going to look at your hospital corpsman basic skills program and your TCCC, your tactical combat casualty care program. If it's a command that has independent duty corpsmen, they're going to look at the independent duty corpsman program, and they're going to look at your PHAs. Those are things they're going to look at when it comes to deployment readiness. They're going to make sure you have effective force health protection. So they're going to look at your anti-terrorism, force protection, and physical security program, your deployment health assessments, your emergency management plan, your limited duty program, and your operational forces medical liaison services. So your point of contact who helps the operational commands coordinate with the MTFs regarding anybody they're sending there for, limb due, somebody who's got like a lot of follow-up appointments or anything like that. They're going to look at your people. They're going to look at your programs that have to do with your people, like your awards and recognition, your civilian drug-free workplace program, your civilian personal management, your CMEO, your command management managed equal opportunity or command assessment program, your sponsorship and indoctrination program, your diversity program, your DAPA, your drug and alcohol program, your education and training program, your good order and discipline program, your family ombudsman, your Navy performance evaluation system, your Navy voting assistant, off-duty employment, physical readiness, your analysis, all that stuff that kind of fall under your people. They're going to look at your quality of care. They're going to look at your access to care. How long does it take for somebody to get an appointment? Your dental population health and disease management, your forms management, your health information management. They're going to look at your referral management and your records management for non-medical stuff. Your patient and family-centered care. They're going to look at your case management program, your customer relations program, your SAPR program, which is sexual assault and prevention response, and then your staff and beneficiary surveys. They're going to look at your budget, right? They're going to look at your performance-based budget. They're going to look at your fraud, waste, and mismanagement program, and then your standard organization compliance. Your research and development. They're going to look at human research protection program, your financial management. They're going to look at your comptroller organization, your budget formulation and execution, financial reporting, accounting, support agreements, civilian time and attendance, your defense travel system or your government travel card stuff. Your command evaluation when it comes to financial stuff, your manpower management, and all that stuff. Material management, well, they're going to look at your material management operations, your government purchase card program, your contract acquisition, your equipment management, your equipment maintenance, and then, of course, your ethics and standards of conduct for government employees. And then your safety and occupational health, they're going to look at safety metrics, your safety program self-assessment, your industrial hygiene surveys or metrics, your industrial hygiene self-assessment, your occupational medicine program metrics, and your occupational medicine program assessment. So almost every instruction on your bib is something that the MEDIG is going to look at. They're going to look at all the policies that an MTF is supposed to be carrying out. So it's a big list. It's worth reading over quite a few times. And like I said, that's enclosure 1 of the instruction. All right, let's review what we've gone over. What Meta Inspector General finding, MEDIG finding, identifies a program that is non-existent or is deficient in major elements, so it does not fulfill the intent of policy? What finding says the program's non-existent or does not fulfill the intent of policy? Well, that's going to be an RFI, a requirement for improvement. What must a command respond with if they receive an RFI? The MEDIG comes and inspects your MTF and they give you an RFI. Well, you've got to submit an implementation status report, an ISR, implementation status report. What form is the ISR submitted on? What form is the implementation status report submitted on? It's submitted on the OPNAV 5040/2. OPNAV 5040/2. When is the ISR due to the Med Inspector General? So if you receive that RFI, that initial ISR needs to be submitted within 60 days. 60 days for that initial ISR. When are subsequent ISRs due if the RFI remains open? Well, you got to send one in every 90 days after that first one, right? First one within 60 days, every 90 days after that. What is required if an RFI remains open for greater than 1 year? If your requirement for improvement remains open for greater than 1 year, you've got to send a letter to the regional commander discussing why the RFI remains open. What Inspector General finding identifies a program that has an effective and formal process in place but requires modification to achieve full compliance? Effective and formal process in place but needs modification to get full compliance. That's a supplemental finding. Supplemental finding. Your continental United States, right? Your CONUS Navy Medicine Commands will receive how many day notice of impending Med Inspector General / Joint Commission inspections? They get 7 business days. 7 business days CONUS, and then your OCONUS Navy Medicine Commands receive how many days of a notice of impending Med IG inspection and Joint Commission inspections? They're going to get 30 business days. 30 business days for those guys. All right, the references on this, Bumed 5040.2 Charlie. Like I said in the beginning of this, be careful. There is an updated version of this, the 5042 Delta, but this is the one that's on your bibliography right now. Like always, keep studying, and I hope this helps you out.